I don't know about you, but you cannot come and talk to me anyhow when I'm wearing a jumpsuit like this. Like, you respect the jumpsuit before you make your speech, okay? Happy New Year, K-Divas, and welcome back to the channel this week. This video is going to be for this jumpsuit I have on here. I'm going to be showing you guys how I made the pattern for the top half, how I cut, and how I put everything all together. It is a wide leg palazzo jumpsuit that has the sort of wrap front body detail, and the shoulder straps are actually adjustable, which is a cool feature that you can add to dresses, tops, and other garments in the future if you wanted to apply that as well. So if you want to find out how I made this jumpsuit, make sure to keep on watching until the end, okay? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, subscribe and join the K-Divas fam if you haven't already. If you don't know, we are up to 300k. Hell, small me from Ughelli, Delta State, Nigeria has over 300,000 subscribers. It's not me, it's all of you, honestly, for supporting, liking, sharing, commenting, and just being the most supportive community ever. I'm very, very grateful for that, and I don't take it for granted. So if you want to join the K-Divas fam, you know what to do. Make sure to click that subscribe button down below, because this year we are not dulling. As in, 2020 smacked us all in the butt, so 2021 we are not dulling. We're going to be exploring new techniques, trying out new garments, making mistakes with our chest, owning them, and growing in the process. So make sure to keep watching this tutorial to the end. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and let's get straight into this. The garment I'm going to be making in this tutorial is for a wrap front wide leg jumpsuit with an adjustable shoulder strap. You're going to be needing the following measurements written on the screen, but if you have a basic bodice and a basic trouser block, it sort of quickens the process. So I'm going to be creating the patterns for the top half for the jumpsuit first in this video, and the first thing I'm doing here is just drawing a long vertical line, which is going to become my center front line. So that line should measure roughly 15 to 17 inches depending on the distance from your shoulder to your waistline. So I'm going in here to mark the vertical distance from my shoulder to my waistline, because that's how long I want that top half of my jumpsuit to be. I recommend you work with your measurement or that of your client for the best outcome. Next up, I'm marking the vertical distance from my shoulder to my bust. Mine is about 9 to 10 inches, and I'm just marking that here across like so. I'm going in to mark a quarter of my bust line along this direction like so, and then I'm marking a quarter of my waistline plus 1 inch for the waist dart. So once I have those marked across, I'm just going in here to square them across, so I have the horizontal lines indicating where my waistline is, where my bust line is, as well as sort of my shoulder area. So along the waistline, I am marking the middle point and then marking off that 1 inch waist dart, so I know where to notch that on my fabric after making the pattern. Next up, I'm going to be using the curved side of my pattern master to connect the bust to the waistline, so I have the side seam of that top half of my bodice for the jumpsuit done. So the next thing I'm doing here is marking 6 inches below the shoulder line, and this is where I'm going to be marking half of my across front chest measurement. Mine is about 7 inches, and once you mark that like so, you can just square that across so you have that line indicating where your across chest measurement sits. For the front arm curve, you would need to connect the bust to that across chest point, but before doing that, I'm going to go ahead to extend my center front line by 3.5 inches so we can have that wrap around effect. Just know that the more you extend this point, the higher your wrap neckline is going to be. So mine ended up being really deep, creating a very sexy V neckline. But if you don't want that, extend yours by 4 or 5 inches. Just extend it by more so it wraps around and the neckline is higher along your bust. So this is what our front top bodice is looking like. I'm going to go ahead and add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all around, add my annotation saying what this piece is, and I would need to cut 2 pairs because I want to join 1 pair for one side of the front and the other pair for the other side of the front along the neckline and around the arm curve. So I'm going to go ahead and trace off the side, the waistline and the bust line for my back pattern, and because I want to keep the back straight along that back neckline, I'm going to maintain the bust line along the back as well. So I'm just going ahead to trace off any lines that I need, add any notched points that I need as well. And the back neckline you can actually make deeper, V-shaped, curved, whatever shape you want to, but I want mine sort of straight-ish along that back area. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer my dart along the back like this. Initially I wanted to actually stitch in the darts, but I ended up just like pleating them into the waistline of the waistband that this jumpsuit has, and the dart along the back is about 11 centimeters tall. Just wanted to like put that out there for anyone who would actually want to like have a dart that they could sew in instead of pleating in the way I did mine for this project. So I'm just going in here to add my seam allowance like so, added my annotations. I need to cut a pair of this I'm going to be cutting on a fold because I don't want to put a zip on the center back but rather on the side seam of my jumpsuit. So these are my patterns here laid out flat. The only thing I did differently was I cut a pair of shoulder straps, a longer and a shorter. The longer one measures 18 inches by 1.5 inches and the shorter one measures 4 inches by 1.5 inches, and these 2 straps you use to create your adjustable strap on the shoulder of the jumpsuit. The trouser patterns that I use for this jumpsuit I have made from a previous tutorial where I made a pair of palazzo trousers that actually had side pockets on the front. And to create this, I worked from a basic trouser pattern. I divided it into 4 panels like so and spread it on another piece of pattern paper underneath by the same amounts across each panel. I've done this in a previous tutorial and I highly recommend you check out that project because that created a really nice wide roomy leg palazzo pattern that I'm going to be using for the bottom half of this jumpsuit. It also comes with a really fun side pocket for anyone who loves pockets like I do, so that is something that you can create in your spare time if you be looking to, you know, create this jumpsuit for yourself. So I'm going to link this tutorial on the screen and down below in the description box for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. And once you've watched and created that pattern, I promise you, you'll not regret it. So once you have your palazzo patterns done, those are the last set of patterns that you'll be needing to create this jumpsuit. I decided to work with a beautiful green, yellow and teal Ankara fabric that just screams summer to me, and I love working with fabrics that are nice and vibrant. They have a way of just uplifting my mood, and that's what I'm going to be using in this project. I ended up using about 4 meters of fabric because of the nature of the trouser. It's really wide on the leg, so it consumed a lot of fabric. So just keep that in mind when you're cutting yours. So these are all of the pieces for my jumpsuit. I have my straps, I have my front pieces, my back pieces for my top half. I also have the pocket facing and the pocket bag, which is going to help to create the pocket on the trouser area of the jumpsuit. And as you can see from the width of that trouser leg, it is a really wide and loose fit around the leg, which I love. As someone who has hips and butt, I love to wear loose pants like these, and because the top half of the jumpsuit is fitted, it just creates a really beautiful silhouette that the bottom is loose. So once you have all of your pieces cut, the last thing you need is a waistband that measures your waist measurement plus 1 inch, which would let you fit the zip on the side, and this is my waistband here. So the first thing I'm going to be sewing is obviously fixing my pockets in. I always like to start with pockets whenever I have pockets in garments, and I'm going to be starting off by sewing the pocket facing to that angled opening like so. And once you stitch up that for the left, you do it for the right hand side. So you sew right sides together like so, and once you stitch it up like this, you will need to go back in and do a top stitch to join the seam allowance to the facing on the inside of the pocket. That would keep the pocket facing tucked away. Give this a nice press, and then you can grab your pocket bag, and this you would need to join to the curved edge on the inside, so joining that seam along that inside part of your trouser, not joining to the trouser, or just those two layers would help you to create the pocket itself on the inside. So I'm just going in here to stitch both layers together, and then taking this to my overlocker and overlocking that seam, since my jumpsuit is not going to be lined. So I'm going to do this for the left and for the right pocket. Give it a nice press, and if I'm happy with that, the next thing I'm going to be doing is be joining that front crouch line of the trouser together, so I have it ready to be joined to the back. So this is what my front is looking like. I went ahead to stitch up that front crouch line together, and I overlocked that seam as well, and I essentially repeated the same thing for the back. So I just stitched together that back crouch line because there's not going to be a zip on the center back. I overlocked it afterwards, and once you have both your front pieces joined and your back pieces joined, you can join your front to your back along the inner and the outer trouser seam. I always like to put pins first before I sew, especially when I'm joining two seams or two lines that are not exactly the same like shape or measurement. So once you have them pinned and ready to go, you can go ahead and sew in your front and your back together along the inner and the outer seam. Remember to overlock or to use your bias binding, however you choose to finish your seam on the inside so your trouser looks good even on the inside of your jumpsuit. So once that is done, you have a whole trouser piece ready to be joined to the top half. But I will say, remember to leave one side open, whether it's the left or the right hand side. Just keep that in mind. I left my right side open because I'm right-handed, so I want to be able to zip it up easily on the right side. So I'm going to set my bottom pieces to the side and work on my top pieces. Because I cut a pair of each side for my front, I'm going to be sewing up the neckline and the arm curve for the two sides of my front so I can create that overlap neatly. I'll also prepare and put together the right sides of my back panels ready to be joined along the neckline. But before I stitch them together, I'm going to create my shoulder straps. So the shoulder strap has two sides, this longer strap here and the shorter strap. So I'm just going in here to fold it twice, and I'm going to be sewing it closed along one edge, very close to the edge, so we have a nicely finished strap. You can also sew this and then turn it inside out. If you have that tiny slim tool that helps you to turn slim straps like this inside out, is up to you. You can also do a fold where you sew it twice on both edges to create some kind of design, but I'm just going to be doing it once fold and then stitching it down like this. So I did this for my left pair and my right pair, so I have my straps ready to be joined to my adjuster parts. So the adjuster part has two sides, the round side which goes around the shorter strap. This is going to sit along the back neckline, and then the part that looks like a double ring that looks like this, you're going to need to slide it into the longer strap like this. So you pass it over and under, and then you would need to loop the end that you are holding on to around the ring on the back side, because they sort of go together as a set. So once you loop it around like this, you need to pass it back through the middle side of the double ring. So pass it over and under, and once you've pulled it out of the other end, you would need to join the free end of the strap to the side adjacent to it. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. But once you've done this once or twice, you literally get a hang of how this works, and it just makes adjustable straps that allows you to actually wear garments higher or lower along the neckline. So now I'm going to be sewing that free side to that end that I'm holding like this, and that is going to sort of stop the strap from falling off with time. So I did this for the left and for the right hand side. I also just stitched the bottom of that shorter strap closed, the side that has the round ring, and this is ready to be joined to the neckline of the top of the jumpsuit. So I'm going to get a set. Remember, when you are putting this in, to remember what side is the right and the wrong side. You want to keep the rounder side of your adjuster as the right side of your jumpsuit. I hope that makes sense. Because this particular piece has no wrong side, because the front and the back is both like the main material, you have a little bit of leeway. So I'm just pulling one side of the strap through like so, and the side that has the round ring is going to sit along the back neckline. So once you've pinned that in place, you know you would need to stitch around the arm curve, around that shoulder, catching the shoulder strap on that top edge of your front arm curve. As you sew, try not to catch the rest of the strap somewhere in the seam, just only the edge along that top of your front arm curve. So when you turn this inside out and give it a nice press, this is what your neckline, your strap, and the whole situation of that front piece should look like. Now we're going to be inserting the other end into the back neckline, and you want to ensure that you place it somewhat even from the side for the left and for the right. So I'm just marking roughly 6 inches from the side seam like so, and I'm going to be passing the edge of my strap into that back neckline like so, holding it down with a pin or a peg, just holding it in place until I'm ready to stitch it down. You need to do this for the left and for the right strap, and when you hold it or stitch it into that back neckline and you turn it inside out, you would reveal the strap on that right side. So I'm going to be taking this to my machine and I'm going to be sewing that back neckline close on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, grabbing that edge of the other side of my straps going along, and when I make my way to the end, remembering to do a back stitch to secure my seam. So I went ahead to turn it inside out, gave it a nice press, ensure that your straps are not twisted, because that happens and then you have to start all over again. But yeah, just ensure your straps are not twisted. So once you're happy with that, you know you can move on to sewing the side seam. So I am sewing close the side that my zip is not going to be sitting on. Remember to leave one side open for your zip, since we're going to be fixing the zip on the side. So if you're putting your zip on the left, leave the left side open. So after stitching that side, I'm not putting my zip close, I went ahead to grab my waistband piece, and that is what I'm going to be using to connect the top half to the bottom half of this jumpsuit. So if you do not want to have a waistband, you have the freedom to make the bodice piece longer by about 2 to 3 inches, but I wanted that sort of like separation. So if I wanted to add a belt or an accessory along the waistline of the jumpsuit, I had the perfect area to do that. So I'm just going in here to pin the waistline of the top to the waistband, and what I did with the dart was I essentially just pleated them into the waistline. I did that for the top, and I'm going to do that for the waistline of the trouser as well. So once that is folded or pleated away, the waistline of the trouser and the waistline of the top should fit into that waistband piece. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch them in place. After that, do a nice overlock to secure all of my seams. This is what the waistline of the jumpsuit is looking like on the inside, and I'm happy so far with the outcome. Once you've reached this point, you know you're ready to attach the zip to the side seam, finishing off the jumpsuit. So I'm going to grab my dress zip, which I had in the studio. If you have an invisible zip, I recommend using that over the type of zip I used here, but I just worked with what I had at home. So I'm going to be sewing my zip into the open side seam of my jumpsuit using my zip footer, making my way from the beginning to the end, and then going to the reverse side to finish off that zip so it sits nicely into that side and allows me to get in and out of the jumpsuit. So once you're done fixing your zip, at this point I recommend trying it on to see if there are any changes you want to make, so you have the freedom to do so before going in to fold and sew the trouser hem line. This is the last step of finishing off the jumpsuit. After doing that, give your piece a nice press And with that, you are done. So this is how the jumpsuit turned out. It is really sexy on the neckline, so just bear that in mind when you're creating yours. But if you enjoyed watching this project, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you'll be recreating this, make sure to tag me on social media at Kim Dave Designs. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.